Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. We are previewing Week 2 in the NFL preseason. We are talking right now with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. Consummate professional, long-term, successful survivor in the industry, a guy who knows how to identify value in all areas of sports betting, yes, including the NFL preseason. Right now we're going to look at a quintessential NFL preseason game, Miami and Carolina. Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. Before we get your take on this game, just tell everyone who's not familiar with you just a quick summary of who you are and what you do.
Well, featured on all kinds of media platforms throughout Canada and the U.S., been in the business now more than 28 years. I guess this would be my 29th football season of winning at Offshore. Well, not obviously they weren't all at OffshoreInsiders.com, but now at OffshoreInsiders.com.
All right, Joe. Well, you know how to analyze preseason NFL odds, and this Miami-Carolina game is kind of a classic preseason game, right? Miami, last week in Week 1, the starters played very well. The backups played terribly. Carolina dealing with injuries, but their quarterback, they got great depth. They got great quarterback play from all three guys who played in Week 1 of the preseason. So how does all that translate into expected performance in Week 2? And then adding on to it, both teams are having some injury concerns. Of course, a huge injury for Carolina caused a line movement, and now Devin Funchess has tweaked his hamstring. I'm not sure if he's going to play here. Miami has some injury issues, so it's a classic handicapping situation for a preseason game. Right now, the line is Carolina +1 or 1.5. Totals 39.5 or 40. Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. How do you look at this game when you're looking for possible betting value one way or another?
Yeah, Kelvin Benjamin is out for the year, and he was a spectacular rookie last year for Carolina. Obviously, the go-to receiver. As you said, Devin Funchess is also out. Now, that's not a long-term concern. My reports say that he'll be back next week in practice, but he will not play in this game. So Carolina very thin at the wide receiver position. They can take it two ways. They do have some veterans there, but they need to find a go-to receiver to step up. But at the same time, there may be a tendency to get a little bit on the conservative side because of all their injuries. But Louis Delmas is also out, the Dolphins safety. So both of these teams definitely have some injuries. For the Dolphins, Devontae Parker is back, their top draft pick, but I would be shocked if they throw him to the Wolves, a stud receiver. So I think this will probably be a low-scoring game with both teams without some receiving talent. I don't think the Panthers are going to get too creative. You know, the Dolphins, I've obviously never really been impressed with their quarterback situation over the years. So this will probably be a low-scoring game.
You know, it's a pretty significant line move. Is that all just because of the injury? I mean, in the regular season, I could see an injury causing a line move like that. But in the preseason, is this maybe an overreaction? Because, again, like I said, you know, Carolina is now a home underdog. Miami's backups did not play well at all in Week 1 of the preseason. Carolina, and of course they lost their game badly, Carolina won their game, and Cam Newton, Joe Webb, and Derek Anderson all played very well. Is that a strange line movement to you? Was that an overreaction?
Perhaps so, but again, it's really two injuries now that the Panthers are going to be minus their top two receivers. It's not just one injury, but Kelvin Benjamin is a legitimate stud, but again, it is only the second week of the preseason. But, you know, when your stud player was probably slated, you're expecting him to play a quarter and maybe a little bit into the second quarter, and now they're going to be down their top two receivers for, you know, about 30% of the game. That's still fairly significant injury.
All right, and when, you know, I'm sure everyone who follows the preseason closely knows that Miami's backups played terribly in Week 1. When you see that in the NFL preseason, do you expect them to bounce back and make an improvement in Week 2, or do you expect them to struggle again in Week 2 and then be likely a good bet against once again?
Well, when you're talking about backups, you don't have to worry about motivation. Guys who look poor in Week 1, they are fighting for their lives. I mean, this is really even bigger than a playoff game for them because they're fighting for their careers. So I do think that you do expect them to bounce back and rally from a very tough outing because, you know, this game means everything to the guys who are in the second and third string when you didn't perform in Week 1 of the preseason.
I guess we're agreeing here, Joe Duffy. I guess my leans would be Carolina and the under. But for the purpose of this video, is this going to be a pass for you, or do you want to make an official pick here?
Mr. Peter Loshak, for the purposes of this video, I think I'll go with the under.
That's how I would go as well, but since you made a pick, I'm going to take a pass just because the game is, I'm still feeling it out, but I would definitely agree with that lean, and if you hadn't made that pick, I probably would have given that as a pick, or Carolina. Officially, this is going to be a pass for me. Joe Duffy taking the under currently at 40, and I agree with that lean. Thanks so much, Joe.